The remake train keeps rolling this month, and this time we have Halo Campaign Evolved. This is a complete remake of the original and iconic story campaign from Halo Combat Evolved, and it marks the first project from Halo Studios. On the technical side, this remake is built on Unreal Engine 5 and makes full use of the engine's cutting-edge features. This includes Lumen for global illumination and reflections, and unlike what we saw on Samsung, this game is using exclusively the hardware path of Lumen, with no software fallback. We can see this by disabling the Ray Tracing DXR flag using the NVIDIA Profile Inspector, which effectively disables the GPU's ray tracing support. Doing so results in a massive performance improvement, but at the cost of completely disabling Lumen. So despite relying exclusively on hardware Lumen, the game can still run on GPUs without hardware ray tracing support, albeit with substantially degraded visuals. Halo Campaign Evolved is also one of the first games to implement Megalights. The visual impact of this feature is particularly noticeable indoors. For instance, energy projectiles from Covenant weapons now act as dynamic light sources, accurately interacting with nearby surfaces and illuminating the environment in a more convincing way. The same also applies to local lights, which contributes realistic dynamic lighting and soft shadowing throughout each scene. And overall, this remake delivers a modern and visually impressive presentation while remaining faithful to Bungie's original vision and art direction. But not everything is perfect, and there are few visual issues such as the usual smearing and temporal noise, and I'm not entirely blaming Halo Studios for these visual artifacts, as they've become something of a signature of Unreal Engine 5 and are difficult to avoid. What I do blame them for is forcing several post-processing effects that can't be disabled, and in my opinion, these effects negatively impact the overall visual presentation. Take a look at this scene and notice the heavy use of chromatic aberration and film grain, and how they obscure fine detail, making the image look noticeably softer. As I mentioned, these effects are forced and remain enabled even when post-processing quality is set to low. Fortunately, we can disable them with few engine INI tweaks, and as you can see here, this results in a much cleaner image. And I'll leave the link to the engine INI file in the description down below so you can download it and try it for yourself. On the performance side, Halo Campaign Evolved is one of the smoothest Unreal Engine 5 games I have tested. Halo Studios managed to sidestep the usual shader compilation and traversal stutters, and the game delivers a consistent and smooth frame time graph most of the time. And I say most of the time because this isn't always the case. There are still few frame time spikes when crossing certain thresholds that load the next area, but these are few and far between and don't have a meaningful impact on the overall experience. When it comes to the graphics menu, it's pretty basic and the game offers only a limited number of options. And as we'll see in a moment, these settings don't scale particularly well in terms of performance. So let's begin with effects quality. This setting is supposed to control the quality of various special effects. But after testing it across multiple scenes involving fire, smoke, and other effects, I couldn't notice any clear visual or performance impact. So either I'm looking in the wrong places or this setting is currently broken. Either way, I recommend leaving it at medium for now, because it might still show a performance impact in certain areas, or it could get fixed later in a future patch and start affecting performance. Next, we have geometric quality. Despite its name, this setting does not affect the polygonal count or mesh complexity of objects. Instead, it adjusts the density of scattered objects such as small rocks and patches of grass, in addition to some distant trees and other decorative meshes. There is one particular issue in this game, which is the foliage popping in some areas. And as you can see here, changing this setting has no effect on that problem. Performance-wise, there is around a 5% cost going from low to high or ultra, so for this one I recommend low or medium, and if performance is not a concern, you can push it to ultra. Moving on to global illumination quality, this one controls the quality of Lumen's indirect diffuse lighting. Visually, there is only a small difference between low and high. It's only when switching to ultra that the improvement becomes more noticeable. With better lighting coverage, more light bounces, and reduced temporal noise, as you can see here. The same trend applies to performance. The impact is relatively minor from low to high, but increases noticeably at ultra, which costs around 7% in this scene. So for this one, I recommend high. Let's move on to lighting quality. This one primarily controls the quality of the game's direct lighting and affects several visual aspects. First, it controls the quality of the virtual shadow maps. Medium and high improve the quality and detail of distant shadows, while ultra produces even higher quality softer shadows. This softer filtering also helps hide some of the visible shadow noise, although this mainly applies to sun shadows. Local shadows, on the other hand, become noticeably cleaner starting from high, as you can see here. Beyond shadows, lighting quality also affects the coverage and quality of projected lighting on surfaces. Low shows less projected light with lower quality edges compared to the higher options. High and ultra also reduce the amount of noise visible in lighting from emissive surfaces, as you can see here. Finally, lighting quality impacts volumetric lighting and effects, which show cleaner edges and become more defined starting from medium. On the performance side, there is around a 4% cost when going from low to medium, around 6% to high, and roughly 9% to ultra. And this setting also has a noticeable impact on VRAM usage, especially at ultra. So for this one, high is the sweet spot, and it's the option I recommend for lighting quality. Next, we have texture quality. This one mainly adjusts the amount of VRAM allocated to texture streaming. We can see this when loading a level for the first time. The lower options, especially low, takes longer to fully stream in all textures. However, once the textures are completely loaded, the differences in texture quality between the options become difficult to notice. And overall, the game is quite efficient when it comes to VRAM usage. It's possible to use high or even ultra texture quality on an 8GB GPU at least at 1440p using DLSS and the optimized settings. One thing worth mentioning is the unusually high system RAM usage. This isn't caused by a memory leak or insufficient VRAM, as it's already noticeable in the main menu immediately after launching the game. Thankfully, it doesn't seem to have any impact on performance. As for texture quality, given that the visual differences between the options are minimal, I recommend sticking with medium or high if you have an 8GB GPU, just to be on the safe side. Moving on to reflections, this one controls the quality of lumen reflections. From what I have seen, this setting doesn't seem to have any impact on water surfaces. It mainly affects reflections on rough and semi-glossy surfaces, where reflections are more diffuse rather than perfectly mirror-like. Visually, much like global illumination quality, the higher options improve the coverage and resolution of lumen reflections. Performance-wise in this scene, there is only a noticeable impact when using ultra, with around an 8% cost. If we move to the cave scene, the impact becomes much larger, around 6% at high and a significant 17% at ultra. So for this one, I recommend medium or high. Next, we have atmospheric quality. This one controls the quality of cloud rendering. Starting from medium, volumetric clouds are rendered at a higher resolution and quality, with little to no visible difference when switching to ultra. This setting also affects the quality of refraction. Notice how on low, the surface beneath the water looks blurrier compared to the higher options. And some specific scenes, especially when using upscaling, this can introduce some noticeable noise on some shallow water surfaces, as you can see here. On the performance side, there is around a 10% cost when going from low to the higher options. So for this one, I recommend low, and if you have enough performance to spare, use ultra. Let's move on to post-processing quality. As we saw earlier, this setting has no noticeable impact on film grain or chromatic aberration. Even on low, both effects remain enabled, and using the engine INI tweaks is currently the only way to disable them. As for other post-processing effects such as lens flare and bloom, this setting doesn't make much of a difference either. There is only a small and hard to notice difference in bloom between low and ultra, and on the performance side, ultra is around 3% slower compared to low. So given the minimal visual difference, I recommend saving this small performance gain and using low. Lastly, we have Async Compute. This feature allows the GPU to process graphics and compute workloads simultaneously, reducing GPU idle time and improving efficiency and performance. However, that's only the case when the game is GPU bound, as you can see here, where enabling it provides a noticeable performance improvement. When the game is CPU bound, on the other hand, enabling async compute can actually reduce GPU usage and lead to lower performance. In general, most modern GPUs should benefit from this feature, but whether you should enable it depends entirely on your system. So I recommend experimenting with it to see what works best for you. So given everything we've discussed so far, these are my recommended settings for Halo Campaign Evolved. Now let's compare the performance of the optimized settings against the Ultra preset at 1440p using DLSS high or balanced. And I am also using low texture quality here to avoid any VRAM related limitations with the Ultra preset. In this first scene, the optimized settings deliver around a 25% performance improvement over the Ultra preset. Moving to another scene with more action and combat, we see a very similar results with an average performance gain of around 22%. However, maintaining a steady 60 FPS is not always possible on the 3060 Ti. The game becomes significantly more demanding when driving the Warthog. As you can see here, even the low preset is not enough to hold 60 FPS in this section. Finally, let's head indoors. These areas are generally less demanding, so we can push DLSS to Ultra or Quality. And once again, we see a similar gap to the previous scenes, with the optimized settings delivering around a 25% performance improvement over the Ultra preset. Before ending the video, I want to give a quick shout out to my Patreon. If you are able and would like to directly support my work, consider becoming a patron to get early access to my optimized settings, as well as downloads of the highest possible quality of my latest videos, including this one. And a big thank you to all my supporters, and thank you as well for watching until the end. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, and if not, leave a dislike. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.